Welcome, folks, to this week's edition of Tech Sales Advice. I am your host, Chris White, and this is the LinkedIn Live program for pre-sales professionals and pre-sales leaders. And these conversations are live, folks. These are not recordings. This is a live conversation. Here it is. It is August 21st, 12 o'clock noon on the Eastern time zone of the United States. And I'm joined today by a second-time guest. He's been here this is his second time. The first time he joined this conversation, I don't even think he was in management yet. And in like 2.5 years, maybe 3 years, you've gone from individual contributor to manager. He is now the general manager of the PSC, the PreSales Collective. His name is Chris Mabry. Chris, welcome back to the show. Congratulations on your new job. How are you doing, my friend?
Thank you, Chris. Yeah, it's good to be back. And you're right. Like I didn't even think of the difference between when we first talked and now. And you and I have worked together on other things like SKOs and programs. I really appreciate being back on your program. I really love it.
Well, thank you for being here, sir. And I know that you've got a busy schedule. You've just recently taken this new role as the general manager. And folks, we don't see you out there. So for those of you who are out there, if you care to say hello, please do so in the comments. And of course, if you have any questions for Chris or myself, please feel free to ask. I'm going to invite Chris to talk a little bit about himself, talk a little bit about his background and how he got to this place in his career. And then I'm also going to invite him to share a little bit about the future of the PreSales Collective, sort of his vision and the collective vision of the leadership group and where they're headed. Exciting times are in front of them. But Chris, in the unlikely event that some of our listeners or anybody listening to this might not know your story and a little bit about you, do you mind sharing a little bit about your background, how you got into pre-sales, and then how you've found your way to this point in your career?
Of course. Yeah, happy to, Chris. Perfect name, by the way. Yeah, so I was, to take it back, I was a techie kid who got into a startup really early on. And I was right out of high school in startups and found that like network engineering and technical work was not only coming a little easier to me than it seemed like it should, but it was also a clear path for me to a great career. I started hanging out with engineers and seeing what they're doing. And I was like, this is my thing. So I was working in a basement building, for those of you who are old school, I was building like ATM and TDM voice networks at a CLEC in the telecom days. And so I was like, super tech. And then a mentor of mine, John Jenner, kind of got in and offered me a position at a startup. And this was an implementation. And I remember the exact call when I was in implementation and I heard a salesperson talking on speakerphone where they lost a deal. Okay. So it's a great regional sales manager and they're doing everything they can and they lost the deal. But I was so enamored by it that I walked up to him and I said, whatever you just did, I've got to get good at it. Like I love it. So it's like that story a lot of us in pre-sales have where it was like, you're technical and then you hear that first time you see a solutions engineering role and you're like, that's mine. That's what I'm going to do. Right.
Totally.
I just fell in love with it, started doing it. I was an individual contributor, traveling the country, working with RSMs, closing deals. And so I went around a couple companies doing that and then got into leadership. And I love the aspect of leading sales engineering teams. Fast forward a while, I was involved in PreSales Collective pretty early on. I became an ambassador and worked with the team, got to know everybody who worked at PreSales Collective. And when it was time, when James and Yuji decided to move to their next venture, I was working with the team and they said, Chris, we've got this really cool thing and we think you might be interested in it. They told me about the GM position. I told them I would be extremely excited to meet the person who got that role. And then they said, you'd be perfect. And
I love
so,
it.
so it's not, it was like, all right, well, let's figure this thing out. And as soon as I started working with the team and the board and understanding what the potential is for PreSales Collective, I know it very well from a leadership standpoint and from being a member. But when I looked at what we can do as growing the organization, it was just like black and white, like draw it with a crayon. I'm in, let's do it. And I'm on day 24 now, 24 business days.
But who's counting?
Yeah, who's counting?
Typical sales engineer.
Yeah, 24 business days. And man, I freaking love it. It's like, it's everything I wanted it to be, because the community is, I love being a part of the community, and then looking at where we can go and unpacking all the great work that's been happening. Working with an incredible team here. One of the untold stories is kind of who works at PreSales Collective. Like, how do you make money? Like, how does this whole thing operate? We're 6 people full time, and some world-class people, and we're putting together a huge amount of stuff. We have an entire learning and development arm. We have an events platform. We have all these things that we do around the world. And it's so exciting. I'm looking at all the comments. I see so many good names in here. Tulsi, Nat, Matt Grable, man, Chris, Kaikis. Appreciate you guys reaching out. It's so fun.
Yeah, I was gonna say the same thing, Chris. To all the folks saying hello, thanks so much. Keep the comments coming. And again, folks, if you have any specific questions for Chris, again, these are live conversations designed to be unscripted, unrehearsed, and unpredictable. So, but by all means, if you want to fire away. So Chris, let's talk a little bit about, I don't know if you want to call this, PSC 2.0 or, stage 2 or what have you. But, you mentioned James and Yuji, and I don't think there's anyone in this profession that doesn't have a great deal of appreciation for what they did. They took an idea, and I met James, I want to say in April of 2020, just before they launched. And in fact, I think James and I gave the first ever PSC webinar back then. And it was just, sort of a simple idea. And then it just exploded, I think, beyond what they even anticipated. And good for them for getting it up to this point. And then, as you mentioned, they've moved on to their next entrepreneurial venture. Talk a little bit more about sort of the vision that you have, the vision that the organization has for PSC, and some of the things that we as a community can anticipate from the PSC moving forward.
Yeah, great question. And this is something I've been wanting to talk a lot about. I'm so glad to have your platform to kind of share some of the ideas. And I want to keep it kind of tight. There's a lot that's actually, like, I have notebooks full of ideas. And one of the things that I found within the first couple of weeks is it's really easy to come up with a lot of ideas here. But you have to execute. You have to take your time. You have to do it right. You have to fund it. And it's kind of like, my analogy, just because it's something I know, is it's kind of like buying an old house that needs work, or an old house in general. You walk in and you think, okay, I love what I see over here. I love this window area over here. I wonder why that decision was made, or I wonder what's going on over here. And so being somebody who comes in, who's following a founder and building scale in an organization, which, by the way, is a very typical, I think that's the interesting part, is this is an extremely normal, typical, founders
100%.
build something, they had a vision, they worked super hard to get to that vision. And then somebody else comes in and says, all right, what can we change? And what can we do? Let's keep the great work working. But where is the relevance? Like, how are we doing? So I've been doing a lot of that. I'm thinking, okay, well, I love the bones. I love the structure. It's great. The paint looks great, but maybe we can change this over here, because now our experience is different, and we want to maybe have an open kitchen concept, right? You just think of things differently. And so, so one thing I've been really leaning into is trying to really reboot our leadership collective.
Hmm.
You know, we know that the leaders in our organization want to get together. They want to meet each other. They want to have that time and space. So we're doing a full reboot on that program.
Yeah.
Courtney's running that program now full time, and it's looking awesome. The next piece is in the events. You know, we're in an interesting space because you know, I think PreSales Collective was mostly made during COVID, and
Without a doubt.
yeah, and our event platform is really, I mean, we have London coming up in just a couple of weeks. We have like a ton of people are going to be there. Um, but I like to get a little bit more creative in events and connecting and kind of building structure and building fun things. I mean, you know, selfishly, I just want to go race go-karts with everybody, right? Like I want to have a good time. You know what I mean? And so I think we're doing an okay job there, but we're doing a full reboot on our events and our enablement programs too. So, you know, we have an arm of our organization that does enablement for leaders and for foundational solutions engineers and consultants. And so it's kind of like it's almost like nothing is sacred. Let's look at everything, but also
Yeah.
don't break anything that's working. You
Yeah.
know.
Yeah. What, from your perspective, is the biggest need in the community, in the industry that you feel like PSC is going to address or designed to address?
So that's a great question. My North Star, if anybody was to say, okay, Chris, how do you make all these decisions? My North Star is community value. And so every single thing we do, what I look at is this more valuable for somebody in the community or less? And
Love that.
so to answer your question in kind of two parts, one is a lot of us are working from home. A lot of us know solutions engineers within our organizations, but we're not that connected outside of our organizations. I know myself before PreSales Collective, I was actually already been in a couple of companies, so I had some connections with other teams and how things were ran at other organizations. But I leaned into PreSales Collective because I was learning how to design, you know, career architecture frameworks, and I wanted to know how big companies did it. You know, I wanted to know how small companies did it. And so we need community, and that's a huge part of what we provide. That's kind of why I'm focused on the event side of it and the networking side of it, because you want to feel like you're a part of something. The second piece is content. So this is actually one of the biggest changes that everybody will see in the community. Is my philosophy on content is extremely inclusive. I want our members, again, it's the member North Star thing, right? I want our members to get the best content available no matter where it's coming from. Right? That's why you and I are on your show. That's why I got your book right here, right? That's why I have John Kerr's book right here, right?
Yeah.
I keep these here because this content is super valuable to our members. And so I have a very, and I would say I'm speaking for the team, we're all very inclusive in our mindset around trying to make sure that our community sees the best that's out there. And so you're going to see a lot of collaborations. You're going to see a lot of new things that traditionally haven't been done. And it could be as simple as just hosting leadership dinners. It could be simple things like that. But I'm really leaning into that.
Love that. By the way, Tulsi just asked a question. Tulsi, thanks for the question. He's giving you kudos for great job with the localized events and the meetups. Would like to see you do partnerships with companies helping SEs with placements, particularly those who are starting out. And Tulsi, thanks for the question. Any response to that, Chris? Any thoughts on that?
I have like 4 meetings this week on exactly that. So this is the interesting part, Chris. I've never worked at an organization before where like the people here have all the ideas. If I wanted to be selfish, I could just just ask everybody the questions. Tulsi, you're hitting it right on the button. We do placements, and we do through PreSales Academy. We've structured the academy to be like a career transition. So it's not somebody who's just out of college, but it's somebody who has maybe 3 years in nursing and they're interested in solutions consulting. We have a lot of educators in that program, and we do placements. So one of the things that sets that program aside from others is, we literally track down job opportunities and help them get jobs. And I'm super passionate about that. I do that I just do that over LinkedIn anyway.
Right.
But one thing that we're doubling down on is the partnerships with companies, because, we want companies to be able to find a pool of solutions engineers that have gone through a program that says the simple stuff like, you're in sales. It's 6 habits, right? It's you're in sales. This is how you go through this. This is how you overcome an objection. This is how you work with an account executive. And
Right.
so we take them down this long path. They build demos on a platform. They demonstrate to us. That's the whole thing.
Yeah.
But we're going to branch out and do a lot more company relationships, so that we have, more of a relationship with our sponsors and with other companies who are looking for good SEs.
Yeah. Fabulous. So, Chris, let me push our pause button here just for a moment. Folks, I'm talking to Chris Mabry. He's the new general manager of the PreSales Collective. We're sort of doing an AMA, Ask Me Anything. So if you do have any questions for Chris, please feel free to ask. Chris, I'm going to ask another question. This is a little bit of a softball, but I need to start, looking at my calendar, looking at my schedule, seeing where I'm going to be. So I know you guys, you mentioned you're in London coming up here pretty shortly. Are there some specific cities that you are targeting to do events in? And if so, are you at liberty to share what cities you're thinking about?
Yeah, so we have, and actually one of the program management calendars is something I'm trying to kind of consolidate for us, so that we can give our community a longer run rate on the events we do. Yeah. But we have London coming up, Dublin, Paris, New York. I'll be in New York. That's on the 5th of October. So if anybody's around for that. We have a lot of community events. So people that ping us and say, I want to host my own PreSales Collective event. I had somebody recently reach out to me about Albany, New York, and it's near me. And so I've got this text that I haven't sent out yet. Natalie, you're probably watching, where I'm going to see who else is in the area and do an event here. We have San Francisco coming up. I don't know the date of that off the top of my head. And then what we're doing is we're building out, my ask to the team is we're building out a 12-month calendar, because I think we've done a good job in tier 1 and tier 2 cities. I think that we need to build out a longer runway and have more predictable meetings. Like every quarter we do this in this city, and every quarter we do this over here. So we're going to make this thing a lot more structured, so people can plan the events. And then we're kind of launching some new things. So with our PreSales Leadership Collective, we're bringing back roundtables. We're launching those again. And so look out for a kind of like a program calendar from us that'll give you a lot more predictability on where to go, where to be.
Fabulous. I'm gonna double down on the New York event. Is that you mentioned that's October 5th? What's an example? Walk us through like what's the day in the life of an event? Let's pick the New York City. If we were to attend, what would we or could we or should we expect?
Yeah, great question. So I have a what can you expect today story, and I have a what can you expect in the future story. What you can expect today is a structured networking social hour. So we rent space, private space in really nice places. And it's typically bar, restaurant, a place where we can maybe hand out small apps, things like that. And we have a budget for that. And we get budget for that from sponsorships and work we do on the side to say, hey, simple stuff. Do you want to put your logo on the banner so that we can afford to rent this space to host it for our community, that kind of thing. Right. And so in New York, We're going to have a few hours at a location. Dasha Zumwalt is, we brought her on full time now as an event coordinator. And she's building a lot of structure to the events where, we have a card, and that card forces you to do a few things like network with some people you don't know, write something about them, that kind of thing. And we're even looking at doing like gift bags at the end for a certain amount of people who accomplish it at a certain amount of time. You maybe have somebody from a sponsored company who maybe stand up and do a thought leadership piece for a few minutes. You can expect at a PSC hosted event, probably one of us will be there, or one of our ambassadors in that area will be there. One thing that we've kind of talked about is the Leadership Collective a little. So we're going to start carving out space specifically for PSLC members to network along with these events. Maybe it's the day before at elevated dining. Maybe it's earlier in that day, whatever, we'll figure out a cadence there. So that's what you can expect today.
And the what you can expect tomorrow answer?
Yeah, this is where I have to be careful. I feel like if anybody on my team's watching, they're gonna be like, don't overpromise. I love creating fun events. And so it's almost like an event ecosystem where we're not just doing a social hour, but we have many events running in conjunction of that social hour over a 2-day period. We have enablement boot camps. And so one thing we'll launch in New York is a Leader Elevate boot camp. That's along with the social event. So you could go to that leadership boot camp, get two days of workshop, take your packet away, go upstairs or wherever we're at, and go to a social hour and meet everybody in New York who's going to be there.
Yeah.
Go a little bit further, it gets a little bit more active, but I kind of can't share any things. I have to build budget for some fun ideas that I have. But we're hoping to launch a handful of new ways to connect next year.
Awesome. Do you ever envision large conferences where you've got, I think of, back to the Gartner days, or, Serious Decisions, right? Where they've got multiple tracks and speakers and vendors. Do you ever envision hosting, maybe starting with one major annual conference, and then starting to do maybe one in the Americas, one in EMEA, one in Asia Pacific, something like that? Like, is that also sort of in your thinking?
Yeah, we've talked about, I've thought about like event approaches a lot. And so one decision is, do you create a conference just like you rolled it out, and you basically build a large annual conference in a tier 1 city. But I think so we have kind of, as an organization, we have explored that. Where my mindset is on events is, we have some great events that run in our community already from our vendors, right? We have Consensus doing Demo Fest.
Demo Fest. Yep.
We have Vivin doing Unexpected. We have,
yep.
I think as a community, again, it's what is the community going to get out of it? Ego, do I want to get on stage at a huge event? Sure, that sounds fun. But what does my community get out of these things, right?
Love that.
Does it make more sense for PreSales Collective to have bespoke events attached to our market events, where we're building that experience and connection for people? And can I do maybe 5 of those instead of doing one of my own conferences? Yes.
Gotcha.
And so I like the idea of doing smaller, kind of think of the boutique hotel experience, right? We want to have an experience that is partnered with companies within our industry, but we may not need to be the person that hosts the big event.
Love it.
Yeah.
Now I'm sorry, go ahead. You had another point.
No, that's fine. I mean, and just to wrap up the conference idea, I would rather create experiences for our membership group than another conference.
Got it. It's all, and I love, and you made it very clear early on. Your true north is whatever's valuable to the community, right?
Yeah.
So,
like if you and I, Chris, if we're doing something that's taking us out of our comfort zone, we're doing something that's active. We're maybe hiking together. We're doing something that's pushing us forward. We're getting some thought leadership. That to me is going to create a connection between you and I much deeper than us going to a conference and sitting in another presentation. I like those, but I would rather us create that experience and attach it to other things.
Love that. Love that. Chris, again, let me push our pause button. Folks, I'm speaking to Chris Mabry. He is the newly appointed General Manager of the PreSales Collective. This is an AMA session, so if you do have any questions for Chris, I encourage and welcome you to fire away in the comments. We can see your comments here. Tulsi, appreciate your comments and good idea, partnering with local colleges. That's certainly another thing we can talk about. Chris, let's talk about the content. We've talked a little bit about the events. You've talked a little bit about your learning sort of, line of business, if we can call it that. What about just the website and the content? What should people be consuming if they're not already consuming? Where should we be going to the website? What should we be looking for? What's happening in terms of the content being produced there?
Yeah, great question. Ways to interact with the organization in general, and kind of how do you get the most out of it? I personally kind of lean towards the Slack groups.
Okay.
I get a lot of, and I'm in it all the time. I just commented on something this morning from Paul. And I get a lot out of the discussions in the Slack channels, like the management channels, the help channels. And that's where I have leaned in personally. And so I highly recommend, if you're not in the Slack, give it a shot. You obviously don't have to pay for it or anything. You just add like the workspace to your own Slack. And so I get a lot of conversation that way. I think the other way to, like, one of the other ways to network within our community is join the summits. Those things
What are the summits?
So we run summits, and this is kind of like top thought leadership programs where we talk about, emerging trends, how to solve problems, how to break into this, and the code, though, the secret here to these events is join early for the networking sessions. And so we actually have somebody who runs these breakouts, and you can join the networking sessions. They'll do a breakout where it's maybe you and 4 other people, and you start to and we prompt like talking points, right? Like what challenges do you solve, or do you run any post-sale motions or anything specific to get people talking? And I learned a ton from that. One thing I did is I submitted a request or like an idea to the PSC member hub, where you can submit like publishing articles, and you can kind of get involved in the community. I suggest this to anybody. In the website, you can submit ideas. And I submitted an idea to create a Veterans for Pre-Sales conversation. You and I talked about that a little bit.
Yeah.
And then that's how I got my first speaking gig with PreSales Collective. Actually, that led to everything, because they loved the idea. I got into Leadership Next. I presented there. What I did is I connected with every other speaker at Leadership Next. Like, I just clicked the picture where all the names are linked on LinkedIn, and I just clicked every picture, and I sent them messages, and I connected with them. I'm still friends with some of those people right now. Karsten at Rapid7, Pam with Salesforce. And so I just handpicked these events and started just to network with people.
Yeah. So these summits, then, these are online. I want to make sure anybody listening understands. So these are online events, and if they join early, there's a networking event before whatever is being presented in the context of like a webinar or something of that nature.
Yeah. They're virtual summits, so real easy, real cheap. They're free for you. You don't have to travel.
And how often are you running these?
I think we're running 5 this year.
Okay.
We have 2 coming up. We have Leadership Next and our Executive Summit. So Executive Summit's for the Leadership Collective, but the Leadership Next, so here's another thing too. Here's a trick. Traditionally at PreSales Collective, we've used the word leadership for like Leadership Next and things like that. Do not let that discourage you if you're an individual contributor from joining, because a lot of those conversations will help you as an IC understand what is it that your management wants? What is it that your teammates want? So I don't know if I'm going to change the words or not, because I kind of like the title, but don't let that discourage you from joining it, because a lot of the time we talk about things like how to prove your value, how to increase your earnings. One big part about if you really break PreSales Collective down, it's, I was thinking about this a lot over the weekend, and I thought, okay, what do you actually get from PreSales Collective? This has been on my mind, since the beginning of my journey here. And I think you get a deep sense of community and belonging. And what does that mean? Well, at the end of the day, you are increasing your earning potential. You're learning from thought leaders. You can do the same thing joining this webinar we're on right now. This live conversation we're having back and forth. We're talking about resources, ways for you to plug in. That ultimately, at the end of the day, will increase your earning potential and allow you to understand what is valuable and what good looks like at many different companies, not just the one you're at. That's to me, that's one of the biggest takeaways of being a member is see in these summits, you see what does good look like at Salesforce? What does good look like at this startup over here? And the more examples of that you see, the more you can craft your own mission,
Yeah. Well, and I love that because, I've had a number of people ask me, what are the transferable skills regardless of what company I'm with? And I do believe that there is such a thing as a set of professional pre-sales, sales engineer, solution consultant, whatever term you use, skills that are transferable. Now they have to be applied in different ways, right? Yeah. Because different organizations are structured differently. We sell different solutions to different prospects, right? We all have different ICPs, right? Some of us sell to enterprise, some of us sell to SMB, right? So this role comes in all shapes and sizes. I still believe there are a fundamental set of skills and approaches and just thought processes that we all need to have as our foundation, whether we're an IC or a leader. And what I hear you saying is that if you get involved in the PSC, you're going to see, hear, learn, engage with those people who are also learning and experiencing the same thing. So I absolutely love that, Chris. I could not agree more.
Dude, look at my story. I was an individual contributing solutions engineer, like SE1 associate, SE as associate as you could get, right?
Yeah.
And I'm still, now I'm the GM of a community organization where I have a completely different job, but everything I've learned is completely applicable. The way that I work with my team, it's the same way I worked with my team at my previous organization. I break down, where are you going? How do we get you there? And then all the learning I did around sales and technical sales, I'm using that to raise the organization bar, to give us the financing to build that experience for our members. So you never know where you're going to land.
Without a doubt. Well, and by the way, as many people have heard me say, it's a journey, right? And look, I've had a lot of, right turns and left turns, but when I think back on it, I mean, every step was an important step in that journey. Chris, you mentioned something about ambassadors a while ago, and I'd like to dig into that a little bit. Could I trouble you to talk a little bit about what is the ambassador program? What does it mean to be a PSC ambassador? And are there terms, like if you're an ambassador, is it for a given year? And if there are people who might be interested in getting involved in this ambassador program, how do they look into this? Do you mind elaborating on that? Because even I'm a little confused as to what it means to be a PSC ambassador.
Yeah. No, and you're not alone, because it's had like a few different lives. So there's like a handful of ways to get involved in the community. One is you just become a member and you interact where you can. You go through some of the free certifications, you put them on your LinkedIn, you make some networking, connections. The next phase is you become maybe a member of one of our specialty groups. So we have WISE. So the Women's and Sales Engineering, Solutions Engineering group, they do fantastic stuff. And I just had the council meeting with them last week. Super impressive. So if that applies to you, reach out, get involved in that. I mean, holy cow, that's a smart group. So the WISE, we have ambassadors. We have some kind of like community members that were founding members of certain areas. Like we have people like Elizabeth Lakes out in London, who is people that are like fundamental to kind of making PreSales Collective work in this region. Like you were a founding member of the DC chapter, right?
I was, yeah.
So we have some people who have been very involved in the community, who I kind of have a list of names and kind of like lean on for help. The ambassador program itself, there's 15 of us globally. There is a registration process and interview. You essentially have to come up with an idea on how you would help us take our professional community to the next level. And you go through the process. And once you're approved as one of the ambassadors, you essentially get a one-on-one, some career coaching. So I went through that with Shauna. She helped me focus on a lot of things. And then you get the ability to speak at some of the summits and kind of work with the community. So I was able to speak at the DE&I summit. I was able to speak at Leadership Next. And so you kind of get that platform where you can talk about maybe some of your unique ideas. I mean, a lot of people watching this probably have some really unique thought leadership. I would say everybody's got a little bit of a twist to the way they see what we do, and every single one of them is valuable.
No doubt.
Like when you and I chat and you explain how things work, I always learn a little bit something new. There's always like that little thing that I'm going to say next time, and so basically the ambassador program is like you talk about how we are going to help the professional community increase our earnings, get more connected, solve problems together, and then you do that for 12 months. And so that the goal of the program is so that you don't need to do it again next year. Like we're giving you, you're giving us, it's a shared responsibility model. And next year you have much more clarity on your career.
Love that. And I apologize. I was distracted for a second. So if for those people who become an ambassador, is there a time limit on that, I guess, commitment or engagement?
Yep. It's a year-long commitment.
It is a year-long commitment. If somebody were interested in doing this next year, I can't believe we're already starting to talk about 2024, but if somebody were interested, for example, in joining up for 2024, when is the right time to apply and begin that process?
Yeah. This is one of those perfect examples of like PreSales Collective is so many moving parts. And on day 24, I'm still learning all of them. So
okay.
I have no idea.
Okay. Well, and look,
and so what I do is I ask somebody around, I'm like, hey, how does that work? And then it turns out we probably have this really great process. I would assume the process starts in January.
Okay.
But
all right.
I don't know.
So if there's anybody out there listening to this live, or anybody catches this after the fact and they're interested in looking into the ambassador program, go to the website and click on the link. And if you can't figure it out, just reach out to Chris. Or reach out to me and I'll point you in the direction of Chris.
Yeah, there you go.
So you did get a question from Andy. Andy, thank you for the question. What's the best way to host an event in my local neighborhood? I hope you live in a nice neighborhood, Andy. But no, in all seriousness, love this question from Andy. Thank you very much. If somebody is interested in hosting something, maybe in their town, their city, their neighborhood, what is the process for starting?
Great question.
Or looking into that.
So in the member hub on the website, you can submit a request or kind of like a proposal for a community-led event. So we have, to break our events down a little bit, we have our local events, which are PSC sponsored events. Those are the ones that you would go to, and we have a budget where you can get drinks on us and food on us, that kind of thing.
Okay.
And part of my responsibility as the GM is to ensure that those not only move forward, but we continue to improve them and we get funding for them. The community-led event is, to your point, Andy, it's like, I want to connect with people in my town, but maybe I don't live in San Francisco, right? And these I love, because I mean, I have a soft spot for like tier 2 or below cities. I love living in them personally, but so suggest a community event. We'll just essentially work with you and say, okay, Andy, here's what we typically do. We typically will run marketing this time. We'll include it in our newsletter. We'll include it here. We'll put it on our LinkedIn. So we do a little bit of advertising with you, and then we just help you drive membership to it. And that's it. So we just did one in Austin last week. It was a morning one at Radio Coffee. And then I think a previous week, Ron ran one out of Dallas. And so I hear people get a lot out of them. So I highly recommend you do it.
So really, if I'm going to paraphrase, but basically anybody who is a member can reach out to PSC and say, hey, I'd like to run a community-led event or facilitate a community, and the PSC will help do some marketing around it, and then let them in essence facilitate or orchestrate the event themselves.
Yeah,
basically.
yeah. Like
Love
this one in Albany, I caught it on a channel. It wasn't like sent to me, but I'm in the Slack all the time, and I said, hey, I'm looking for people in Albany. I'm maybe going to do an event, and I was like, I'm 20 minutes away from that. Hey, and I maybe have an in with PreSales Collective, so maybe I can see if we can get a little budget or something.
Nice.
So it was just somebody I think it was just somebody in the area working from home saying, hey man, I want to meet others in my area. Maybe I'll go to lunch with them, and maybe we can go work at a co-working space together or something.
Love it.
Yeah.
I think that's great. Well, and you're right. I mean, there are so many sales engineer, pre-sales leaders, and we don't really have a place to connect, a place to meet up. So by providing that, I think it's just fantastic. And so many of us are so passionate about this profession. We love, and as I like to say, nobody understands the plight of the sales engineer manager like other sales engineer manager. Right?
Totally.
I mean, our challenges are very unique to our role. I mean, of course, everybody thinks that their challenges are special and unique, of course. I think ours are particularly so. I think it's fabulous. Chris, anything else? We, believe it or not, we've been at this for about 45 minutes. Anything else that maybe you were hoping we would touch on or talk about that we haven't, that people should know about, either yourself, the future, the vision of PSC, what's going on now, what's coming down the pike, wide open?
Sure. I think moving forward, in the community, I think a lot of us are wondering like, hey, what's going on? Where's this going to go? Because it was very attached to the founders. And that's very typical, right? Most founding kind of companies have a founder-led attachment to them. And I think now people are just wondering like, what's next? And I'll tell you, like, I have a very, like I said before in the very beginning, I have a very inclusive approach to our community because I think the members will get more out of it. I will open up the door for almost any relevant sponsor. I'm not going to be like, Coca-Cola. No, wait, maybe. Hey, Coke, if you're listening, we're called PreSales Collective. No, just kidding. Look, like the great Steve Irwin in Australia said, he will take anything because it's all going back to wild spaces, right?
There you go.
I'm putting as much as we can back into PreSales Collective to make it extremely valuable, because this thing does not need to be the Chris Mabry show. Doesn't need to be the Liz show. Doesn't need to be. This is going to live on well beyond me, right?
Yep.
If let's just say I want to open an ice cream shop in an island and I don't want to work on a computer anymore, it doesn't need to be about Chris Mabry. This is about the community. So moving forward, the experience here will be much more focused around our growth. The crazy part, Chris, is, I told you in our conversation just how exciting the potential is for PreSales Collective. I'll just give you some numbers. So we're at about 35,000 members. It's a huge group. Okay. It's a massive group of people all around the world. And it's something to be totally proud of. But the latest study says there's a little over 1 million solutions consultants around the world. Okay.
Crazy.
So what's preventing us to get 10% of that number? You know what 10% is? That's 3Xing our organization.
Yeah.
Like I said, I want to go race go-karts with everyone. You know how much easier it would be to do that if we could get there? So my only
it's a lot of miles on a go-kart, by the way. Just saying.
My only ask to the audience is bring a friend. We are strength in numbers. We are a direct result of the size of our community and the engagement of our community. So what we can all do, if everybody says, well, I don't know if I have time to be an ambassador. I don't know if I have time to do this. And Chris, I love your book, but I just haven't read it. We all have things going on. I have 2 young children. I totally get it. I'm never going to be the guy who says, oh, you need to be totally involved. Just bring a friend, put it up on LinkedIn. The more we grow, the better content. Like we're doing a webinar tomorrow with Consensus on compensation, on how to go to your CRO as a solutions engineering leader and get more money for your team.
That's good. What time is that? What time is that webinar, by the way?
That's at 12 noon Eastern time.
Okay, I'll have to catch the recording. I'm speaking at a luncheon tomorrow, but
awesome. We have over 400 registrants for this webinar.
It's amazing. Yeah, it's amazing.
You know why?
Awesome.
It's because we're all trying to increase our earnings. Right? And if we grow PreSales Collective, we can bring a lot more of this thought leadership forward. And so my drive is to make it exclusive, make it fun, make it interactive, make it something that you can't not want to go to, but at the same time, try to keep that North Star of like, this thing needs to grow and live beyond me. So how do we get it there? And I can't risk, one of the hardest parts about my job, Chris, is I can't risk it failing on me because everybody is depending on it. So it's different than working at a tech company. I'm not coming out with SaaS, software.
Very different.
And so anyway, so that's my call to action. I didn't even have any plan, but that's my call to action. Add a member, bring a friend. And I think the experience moving forward will be, hopefully, you'll just find it extremely engaging and fun.
Yeah. Well, and I think you're right. As I reflect on, I think I've attended at least one event here in the DC area, and just other things that I've attended. You're right. People are busy, and people don't. I mean, fun is great, but it also has to be valuable, right? People have to be connecting with people that might help them progress their careers, or people that they might be able to hire. They need to be connecting with people that they can learn from. They need to be connecting with people that might be interested in learning from them, right? So I do think that that's the challenge that lies ahead for the PSC, is to sort of balance out the fun factor, the value factor, the networking, the learning, right? To me, that's the challenge. I feel very confident in the future of the organization, just having gotten to know you over the past few years, the passion that you bring to it, the vision you have, and I know you're a get the job done kind of guy. So I think the PSC is in very good hands. I'm very excited to see what's ahead and where the organization goes under your steering and leadership. And I'm excited to be, along for the journey, at least in some very small way. So
Yeah.
I'm seeing a few comments, Tom chiming in, Rick chiming in, guys, and everyone who joined. Thank you so much. Chris, fair to say that anybody who's not already connected with you on LinkedIn, that you welcome them to reach out and connect?
Oh, 100%. So connect with me on LinkedIn. I do a lot of, I'll post stuff that I find that's valuable. Sometimes I write things myself. But if you feel like, oh, I don't know how to stay on top of everything that's happening at PreSales Collective, follow us on LinkedIn, follow me. We'll do a good job there. And look out for some very clear programming and things of that nature. And if you ever want to know, hey, how do you get involved or anything like that, join the Slack. So the Slack is it's where it's at. And Chris, thank you so much for putting this together. I really appreciate your time, your platform. I love the book. I love that you signed the book for me, even though we're friends. You still signed the book for me, which is cool. And I look forward to more of this, man. I really appreciate it.
Well, I'm more than happy to have you join me on this, small, humble little platform that I have and talk about yourself and the PSC. And I'm excited to see where you guys are going. And look, I mean, my big takeaway from this conversation is the Slack. I had the Slack. What is it? I think it's called a workspace. I'm not the biggest Slack guy, so apologies, Slack folks. But I had it up and was pretty active for a while, but I don't think I've had it active for a while. So I'm going to add that back to my desktop here and pay a little bit more attention to what's going on. And I'm excited to collaborate with you moving forward, Chris. So
me too.
Folks, for those of you who hung around to the end, thank you so much for joining. For those of you who caught the recording, I hope you found this valuable. Chris, I'm going to invite you to join me. Maybe in the early part of next year, I'll have you back and we'll get an update from you to see how things are going. Otherwise, folks, have a good week. And as a reminder, I try to do this every Monday. So tune in. You can follow #TechSalesAdvice if you want to follow it on LinkedIn. Of course, you can go to techsalesadvisors.com to learn more about the programs that I run. Chris, any final words from you, sir?
That's it. Let's go. We're at the very beginning. So it's only going up from here.
Indeed. Good luck. Chris, hang around backstage just for a minute. I'll give you your parting gift. For everyone else, I'll see you next week. Thanks all.